Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Quest for the Bestest. It's the podcast from Backlot Banter where we review every single Palme d'Or winner in random order. We are taking a look at every single winner of the highest prize at the Cannes Film Festival from way over there across the ocean in France. And today we are looking at the 1966 winner, A Man and a Woman, or in French, Un homme et une femme. There we go.
You told us earlier.
I'm doing it like in Portuguese. It's all these
more
languages go into my mind, and I just get all jumbled. Okay, whatever. This movie is directed by Claude Lelouche, starring Anouk Aimée and Jean-Louis Trintignant, with some child actors too, but they're not listed here on the IMDb front page.
Really? They're one of just a few characters in this movie.
A few characters. This is a romance film that I'm excited to talk about after we hit that little bit of housekeeping, remind you of what we did last week, because we had another similarly old film, but it was not a French film. Cross the English Channel, go to the Isles, and you get the film Go Between, which we talked about last week. We didn't really like it all that much. We thought it was pretty boring and didn't have to say a lot. But watch the review, and you can get all the details about it. Card up there in the corner.
Then you don't even need to watch the movie. Just watch the review.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, that's why we make these, to replace the films.
Yeah, that's right. I think ultimately
say, screw you to the artist.
Our reviews are more artful than these films from
on occasion.
Past. On occasion.
Watch an AI summary of the film.
Yeah.
A little bit of footage, then listen to our review. That's all you need.
That's right. That's all you need.
Well, The Go-Between did not score very highly on our list. It got second above the bottom with a 4.2, so it's at the spot number 10 on the list right now. But maybe maybe it'll go up, maybe not. I don't know. We'll see where
I would be
this film
incredibly shocked.
Where A Man and a Woman goes. But first, we've got to hand it off for our lovely ritual of reading a featured comment. Abram, do you have something for us?
Well, I mean, I certainly don't have one from The Go-Between.
No.
Because The Go-Between ranked low on our list and low on the priority of our...
It did solidly in views, but no one had any thoughts on the film or thoughts on our thoughts.
No.
Very interesting.
No, but this person who has intriguingly no name on YouTube
How do you even do that?
has some thoughts on our review of The Greatest Show on Earth. Sorry, we're digging real fucking deep.
We're digging deep. Well, it's a blast from the past.
Different channel, different Quest series.
Leave more comments, please. But our no-name friend here, who has what appears to me to be a Sonic Forces custom avatar as their YouTube profile picture, says the following. I agree with you guys' opinions on The Greatest Show on Earth. In my opinion, I both love and hate the movie, but it's probably one of the most confusing movies ever made and I've ever seen. Interesting take.
Mm-hmm.
It's an all-over-the-place movie because of the amount of problems I have with it. We've got 4 problems here.
Number 1. Tim, put this graphic up on the screen.
Hang on.
Issue number 1. The subplot of Buttons felt like it was from another movie. I agree.
A better movie.
Issue number 2. The overwhelming and confusing love story. Issue number 3, the running time should have been cut down to simply 2 hours. And issue number 4, the bad guys taking down Brad's circus are pointless.
I'm sure I agree with him.
Yeah.
No,
I definitely agree about Buttons. I don't remember anything about the love story. It was too long, and the villains really had no point.
Yeah.
So
that's fair enough.
What we really should do is re-review The Greatest Show on Earth without rewatching it and see how good we can
see how we do. Sadly, I'm sad to inform you guys that any criticism of The Greatest Show on Earth is null and void, because that's what inspired Steven Spielberg to be a filmmaker. So his contributions to cinema outweigh what is unmemorable or mid about The Greatest Show on Earth.
Yeah, but he didn't make the Halo movie happen, so he's
okay. That's an equally great crime to cinema.
And he made Ready Player One.
Okay.
And he's making Ready Player 2.
Okay.
All right. Let's talk about something with some real influence on film history and film, the French New Wave. Because would you agree or disagree with me before we, tell about the movie? This is good context, I think. Is this film a French New Wave film or not?
Yeah.
Yes.
I would say so. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It's in that 60s era. It's got the playing around with color and editing and sound design and cutting back and forth, some cinematography, funky wonky stuff.
It's quite grounded in its characters and so on and so forth, but also, as I mentioned, playing with the cinematic form a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, what is this film about, Tanner? Since we've hemmed and hawed for
Well,
long enough, what is a man and a woman actually dealing with?
I am so glad you asked, Timo. So this film is about a man
Oh my
named Jean-Louis, same name
And?
as the actor, actually, and, if you can believe it, a woman named Anne. And these two fine, youngish folks.
Oh, I think really the point is that they're not that young, though.
Yeah, but they're not old.
Sure,
They've
but
got kids.
There's
Exactly.
Yes.
a
And that is
wonderful
important.
term for
They-
this. It's called middle-aged. They're neither
That's
young
right.
nor
Oh,
old.
thank you, Tina.
Yeah. They have both lost their spouses in tragic accidents. So basically, they have a meet cute, I guess you could say, a fateful meeting, dropping their kids off to a boarding school. And over the course of how long would you say this movie takes over the place of? Maybe a week or two.
I think it's an hour and 45 minutes.
I
Okay,
think it's
interesting.
actually a bit
I think it's
longer.
months.
It's maybe about a month
Yeah.
or something.
Sure.
Yeah.
There's a line at the end of the movie. He's like, "It's been a while" or whatever.
Yeah. But anyway, they there's not a lot to it. Frankly, they meet, they fall in love, they get to know each other a little bit. But what really happens is they come to find out that their respective love left over for their departed spouses is sort of getting in the way of their connection to one another as much as they might enjoy each other's company. So basically, that's kind of the event of the movie. There, they learn about their professions, and there's a race, a car race that I'm sure we'll talk about. But they kind of end up together at the end, but also kind of not.
Yeah.
It's a little
It's one of
open-ended.
those kind of ambiguous
Yeah.
endings.
Well, because as we've learned,
ambiguous, I would say. It's like
as
kind
yeah.
of clear and
Sure.
kind of not.
As Tucker learned and informed us of last night while we were watching, there are 2 sequels to this film. Very much in an extended, like before sunrise, before sunset, before midnight kind of thing.
Okay.
These films came out the original was 1966, of course.
Yep.
The sequel, next one came out in 1986, and the final installment came out in 2019.
Whoa.
Same actors. Like I said, it's like very much like clearly an inspiration for Linklater's Before trilogy.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But
Except
yeah, just,
Linklater got
overall
around to
great-
finishing the
great
Before
time period.
trilogy before this trilogy got around to finishing.
Exactly.
itself.
He started it after and finished it before.
Wow. So,
Yeah.
what did you guys think of A Man and a Woman? Maybe Abram lead us off here. What are your thoughts on this film?
Yeah, I liked it.
Sure.
All right.
I think that this is a very intriguing film to discuss in that I feel like its sleepiness is obviously the point. Its experiment with form results in very long periods of time of no dialogue. It's really not a dialogue heavy film in any respect, as you're sort of drinking in the visuals, but a lot of the same visuals. We were at the test track for a long time. We're driving around for a while, and I find the sort of cerebral nature of it to be nice. I find myself maybe wanting perhaps something deeper to pull out of the narrative, which I feel like I don't necessarily find, because while I enjoy the aesthetics and I enjoy the characters, I think beyond that the film just kind of rolled off me, I guess.
Sure.
Mhm.
I think that I agree in large part. I think the reason why I still do pretty solidly recommend this movie is even though I could say I can compare it to other things, I do think the Before trilogy is on the whole better. I compare it to other romance films. I think this film does a really interesting thing in kind of being, I would say, more of a middle ground between the like crazier French New Wave films and a more traditional romance. This is linearly told. You're not getting there are
it's
flashbacks,
pretty
but they're
nonlinear.
Well,
how? I mean, the flashbacks are them talking about the conversation, and then you watch the flashback. So I
Sure.
don't think that counts as nonlinear storytelling. But it's a straightforward romance narrative that I think does its best experimentality in its color grading and in its editing and in its cinematography, which I think keeps it very visually fresh. And we got 2 interesting characters that I think are fun and very unique to learn about over the course of the film. And the idea of
très original, as they say.
yeah, sure. I guess they do. And the idea of them having this sort of emotional baggage left over from the grief of their their dearly departed, their respective dearly departeds, is an interesting thread to follow. I do think that the film takes a while to get into that. I especially on the side of the guy Jean Louis. But I like this movie. I think it is solidly made, but it is when I want to watch a romance film, I think that I want something a little bit snappier than this. Because I really find romance films for me work the best when there's a ton of really deep dialogue scenes and jokes thrown back and forth. And this is there, but it's not as rich as I want out of my favorite romance films. So it's a good movie, but I'm not glowing about it.
Mm-hmm.
Timo?
I kind of am glowing about this movie. I
Look at him.
really dig
Look at
this
him.
one.
Oh God, cover your eyes.
No, this movie, the way I describe this movie is a vibe. This is a total vibes-based movie, and my assessment of this film definitely comes from this very strong vibe that I get from it, right? We're in the 60s. We're in France. We've got cool cars. We've got very, very good music, attractive actors. And I think that you guys have talked about the visuals a little bit, but are varied, the different film stocks, the different color processing that is done to them, this beautiful color photography, and this also very beautiful black and white photography. I am just enraptured by
the very beautiful photography.
The blue and white photography, yeah. The whole essence of this film really brings me in, and I agree that these characters are very interesting to me, but honestly, I take it from a much more just soaking up this romance. How are these characters learning about each other? I knew that they were both widows going into it. That's the promotional material. So I'm like, where is, what's that give and take about their past relationships? And I think that there's not a ton of stuff romantically to chew on, but I really like our journey. I really like the journey that these characters go on together and the ways that they don't talk about how they're feeling for each other. This film is really not very dialogue based, like you guys were saying. Those moments when we have large parts that are just filled with this. I love the music in this film. This just really soothing. You've got some bossa nova, you've got some samba, you've got all kinds of this 60s ass, French ass music that just puts me into the vibe of the movie in a major way. And so I come out enjoying the characters. I think the kids are really endearing and really funny. They're the little boy is probably my favorite character when he's starting to speak English and Spanish at the restaurant. And so I really dig this film. Maybe more for its parts than its whole. I dig all the little different pieces of the film, and I don't think they necessarily flow together, but it's I get this very strong feeling of the era. I get this very strong feeling of the place that they're in. And then everything else is enjoyable on top of that. So I came out of this movie being dang, what a surprise. I really liked it.
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of find this to be, maybe the platonic ideal of a French New Wave film. You of course have the pioneers of that movement, like Godard or Varda or whatever. But when I watch their films, I feel like I'm much more interested in the study of them and of the masters behind them and what they're doing for the movement of the genre and what have you. But when I was watching A Man and the Woman, it's a lot closer to what Timo was kind of saying. It's much closer to a vibe, I think, because of what we had sort of mentioned. Either Abram or Tucker had mentioned that it's kind of just it's more along the lines of a straight up romantic film than some of those other works might be. And for that reason, I think it's a lot easier to just sort of let yourself rest in this film.
It's not particularly challenging as a film. I don't think it's not forcing you to figure out what the hell is going on.
I think that is why it appeals to me as maybe kind of an entry level French New Wave film.
For sure.
Is that it isn't as experimental as what you kind of think of the genre.
Yeah, in film school or whatever, they'll throw you into the deep end with a Godard or whatever. But this does feel a lot more closer to what might be
a woman is a woman and not a man and a woman.
Exactly.
Like Cleo from 5 to 7 or something, which is just a much harder film to what the heck is that one about? I kind of know, but I know what this movie's about way more than I know about what a lot of other French New Wave films are about or trying to say at least.
Yeah, and obviously we've sort of applauded already the beautiful visual stylings of this and how it can sort of flow from these states of just conversations of our characters to showing you these very rich, very textured, very colorful either landscapes or just shots around the city or what have you. I think it is a kind of a feast for the senses and for the heart. I think at the end of the day. So where should we
And
start
we're
here,
eating well
gentlemen?
tonight, boys.
We are eating well tonight with the man and
It's
the
a
woman.
banquet.
Uh-huh.
Let's
Where do we want to start here?
our main two characters. Let's talk about our race car driver and our continuity girl, because those are the
Sure.
jobs that they
Yeah.
do, which it's
Script
not
supervisor.
Uh-huh.
the script scripty.
Uh-huh.
Is that what they call it?
Do,
industry.
do never call script supervisor the script girl. That's out. That's passe. Don't do that.
Uh-huh.
Continuity's
Isn't that what
out.
you just did?
Not you.
Well, you said you
in
call her
the, in, the,
continuity
in the
girl.
60s, in the 60s, they might have done that. Timo
Yes,
was
I'm
just
talking
sort
about
of
the-
staying
I'm-
true to the time.
Just kind of updating, refreshing the lingo a
Uh-huh.
little
Sure.
bit here.
But no, I mean, I think it's very interesting that we spend so much time talking about our characters' professions. We kind of get that in instead of something in the way of like them talking about their past experience to let us like get to know their characters a little bit more.
Like
of course,
who
that
they
comes
are.
around later. Yeah, you learn who they are through what they do, which I think is very interesting. And something that potentially films should do more. Just sort of giving us a colored background of this person as who they exist in the world, rather than just like, well, here's the kind of person that I am. Da 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 da.
Mhm.
I like driving
Yeah.
my Mustang on the beach while my kid sits in my lap. We
Exactly.
just get to see him
Yeah.
do that.
And he does a lot of like donuts on that
Yeah,
page.
yeah.
I'm like, wow, France is very lax.
Yeah, I just allowed to do that back in the day.
day.
I think they're both really interesting because obviously they both have this deep trauma. In the case of Anne, the death of her husband on set.
Mhm.
In the case of Jean-Louis, his wife's suicide.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Which are both
And
taking place at their job. Those things are
Yeah,
both
or in
work
connection
related.
to them. Yeah.
Yeah.
it's interesting because you would expect that that's really what hangs over them and what they bond over and work through. You might anticipate a version of this story wherein it's getting over that combined trauma that brings them together, but
Mhm.
it's not. That's actually the wedge. And as Tucker was saying, we get deeper into that, especially in the third act as we're wrapping up the film. But I find it compelling that it's not their children even that they feel a particular burden to. They are very
They put their kids in boarding school. If you
Yeah.
feel a big
Yeah.
burden to your child, you don't put it in boarding school.
Yeah, they're both still very aloof people, and we know that Jean-Louis lives very well. He makes a lot of money.
Mhm.
He says that. He says he got an interesting job that makes him a lot of money, and we
Yeah.
have a really fun like it's not really a dream sequence,
Hypothetical
but
cutaway.
It's-
Yeah, it's one of these moments that's very French New Wave, and where we are bending sort of the limits of the filmic form in showing our characters' imagination rather than
Yeah.
what is existing in the reality of the film.
It's either that to me, because it isn't that these we're diverting from the character talk, but because this is the form of the film, it's I think really interesting that there's all these little flashbacks that we see where like a character is talking about an experience or is telling a story to a character, and then boom, we flash back to see what happens. And in that instance, when he talks about the job, and it's like we see him being like a pimp. I can't exactly tell if it's the imagination of the character that's listening that we're seeing, or if it's the way in which the character that's telling the story is relaying it to the other character, because I think you could read it either way, which is kind of funny. There's like these couple knowing, like in that moment there when he's talking about what he does, it's almost the line deliveries right after that flashback seem to indicate to me that he had just said that he's like, yeah, like I pimp out these women and I make a bunch of money, but then I'm also a test driver. He was just kind of being a suave, like funny guy in that moment.
Yeah.
But I
And
think that's
that
a really effective mechanism for delivering the information about backstory in a way that isn't characters just saying it to each other.
Well, that's, I think, the most interesting part of this movie is not only does it have the freedom because of the liberation of style that French New Wave filmmaking allowed for, but it also gives us very unique characters job-wise to look at. I mean, these are not just a guy that works at a factory and a girl that works at a bookstore or whatever. I mean, like,
You're talking.
referencing,
I mean, you're talking about
Antoine
some
and
Soviet
Antoinette.
cinema,
Antoinette.
right?
Yeah.
The Soviet New Wave would have the guy who works at the steel mill and the
That's
woman
true.
that works at the
Yeah.
bookshop.
But I think that choosing distinct jobs does a great work in setting this film apart in my mind.
Mhm.
In that it gives the film the opportunity to frankly have multiple like action sequences.
I said, yeah.
And that is insane and just totally out of left field, but it makes sense in the context of the world. But I was watching like that's just a good idea to just add a little pizzazz to your relatively straightforward romance film by having the previously passed husband of our female lead be a stunt actor, and so we just get action movie stunt sequences shot in French New Wave style, which I don't know if I've ever seen anywhere else. And then like,
but it's
basically there's like a Ford v Ferrari for 15 minutes.
Yeah, and yet like with those stunt sequences, we're not viewing them through the lens of the camera. We're viewing them through the eyes of Annie on set. There, like it's we get. I love seeing all that equipment, old timey filmmaking gear showing up in a movie is like makes me just jump for joy.
Have you seen the movie Day for Night, Timo?
Not yet, no.
You should watch it. I love that movie.
I need to check it out.
What I really like is a lot of times when we end up back on the film set or we end up on the track, we're coming into them from these frame scenes in the car.
Yeah.
And it's not just that we transition into these exciting moments, that we do it wordlessly, which I find very compelling. A lot of the time, it's just a camera cut that takes us back to a scene playing out in its linear time, which is to say that for the most part, there's not a lot of monologuing happening here. It's not that we hear Anne taking Jean-Louis back to the battlefield and recounting what happened. We simply see it happen, and so
there's like the frame of, oh, what did your husband do? Cut back to the thing, and then because it's wordless, and we're not hearing voiceover about the scene,
and there's
always your mind is like, who is this? What's happening for a second? Like, oh, well, that's interesting.
You see the character, you see Annie, or you see Jean-Louis there, the actor. You're like, okay, boom, connected. And I think that the film stock choice, that it always changes. We're not cutting from this very nice, rich, lush, saturated 60s color to the same thing in a flashback. We're cutting to a sepia tone or a very harsh blue, black and white, or a very
it's the other way around, actually.
Gray.
The modern day is either blue or black and white, and then the past is in color. But then also the past has like the dirtiest film stock / film lenses ever made to humankind. No idea what that is supposed to mean in the context of the film, but it's just very, very interesting. It just shows how
it's like the choice. Yeah, it is all over the place of like what film stocks, what looks we're choosing to see win. I believe that it's intentional, and I believe that there's a framework to it and stuff to maybe derive out of.
Well, because we also do regular color stuff in the present day as well. I mean, the very beginning of the film is that when they're picking up their kids, or when we're whipping the doughies on the beach or whatever. A lot of that stuff is just in standard color, which is very interesting. And
so I don't quite know what to make of all that switching back and forth, but I do find it interesting, and it just clues me in a lot. I'm like, oh, we switched time.
Putting the pieces together, it's actually that it's usually in black and white or blue and white, blue and lighter blue, I guess, when they're together. And when they're not together, whether that's them with their children when they're not like alone together, whether it's them with their children or it's a flashback with their previous spouses, or when they're at their job, then it's in color, which is interesting.
Not always though, because like when Jean-Louis is racing Le Mans, which takes place towards the end of the narrative, we're not flashing back. Well, we flash back to one of his races at Le Mans, but his final race when Anne sends a telegraph is also not presented in color.
Okay, gotcha.
Even though he's there by himself.
Yeah. Then I also could say that in that sequence he's doing a lot of thinking about her, and so
of course,
she's very present in the character's mind at that point in time. I'm not sure if I might not be correct about this, but when I think back to the sequences, I remember the conversations, the dates, those were in black and white. And then I distinctly remember, the fiery explosions of this film set and the driving around the beach and standing by the pier. Those are definitely in
by
color.
and large, that is the trend that we hold. And then there's the only sepia tone sequence is, I believe, when we're in that restaurant.
Yeah.
Or is that right?
It's like four of them out for a meal.
Yeah.
Ordering Coca-Cola.
Ordering a Coca-Cola, that's right. Yeah, I mean, I think all of it is very beautifully presented, and yes, yeah, provides a very fresh visual style every time, so that you're always sort of engaged on multiple levels, frankly. So yeah, I mean, I dug that. I dug the whole color switching of the entire film.
Okay, back to the romance, which is I think where we were talking. We were talking about our characters a little earlier before we dove off on that, which is a very
Hmm.
interesting tangent and one worth discussing. But
Of course.
what do you guys take of this romance story in which the characters are trying to overcome their this past trauma, and kind of getting a bit into the ending of it and the ways that like Annie kind of decides not to go forward with this new relationship? Do you guys take issue with that, or do you like it, or what?
Um, I feel like there's maybe sort of a outdated. This film's from 1966 or whatever, so it's understandable. But like this attitude of, oh, Jean Louis is able to move past his wife killing herself a lot easier than it is for Anne to move past her husband dying tragically.
Mm-hmm.
Because obviously, he's like interested in Anne from basically the what after that first car ride, and then eventually in the film we reveal that he also has a current girlfriend who doesn't know that he's a race car driver, so he's keeping himself distanced, but romantically he is allowing himself to move on in a way that Anne, evidently from the end of the film, clearly isn't yet.
Well, she does. He does suggest to her in a line of dialogue when they're earlier on in their relationship that Jean Louis says, like, he sounds like Jesus, and
Oh, yeah.
and says maybe he is to me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so I think you're probably right, Tanner, that there is this implicit uh, cultural attitude
Mhm.
towards the importance of a relationship.
But it's
Yeah,
all, it,
yeah,
it, could,
yeah.
it could also just be a character level thing that this guy can move past it and she can't.
Well, I
Like
think-
it doesn't need to be a gendered thing.
I
I
agree
think
with you, but I
maybe
think that,
oh, go ahead, Abram.
well, what I was going to say is that I feel like in one respect the title of, for me, A Man and a Woman
Mhm.
suggests that there is some sort of larger commentary
Sure.
about men and women in
Yeah.
the film, and I also think that it's largely not really interrogated that he feels seemingly very little towards the death of his wife.
Mhm.
At least,
Yeah.
definitely not to the same extent that she feels for the death of her husband.
Either that, or to me, I read it as a bit of repression and a bit of an unwillingness to like think about
Yeah.
it too much. The
Mhm.
the fact that he doesn't bring it up very much, and that she has to drag all this information about his
Mhm.
ex-wife, or about his his old partner, out of him, that seems to me there's like a reticence of wanting to acknowledge it and think about it.
Well,
I mean,
and the script also, I think, portrays this, and I'm kind of just cluing into why I think we feel this way, is that we actually learn quite a bit about Anne's past husband.
Yes,
We
Pierre.
see them going on
Yeah.
dates. We see his job. We
Mhm.
we learn a lot about how much she loved him. She talks about him consistently.
We see them
And-
riding horses.
Yeah, they're riding horses. They're putting their heads on trees. They're
Yeah.
running around the fields. Like, we basically get a mini romance movie
Yeah.
about a stuntman and a woman on set
Mhm.
go see the
The
Fall Guy in theaters
May 3rd.
a few days after this goes up. But we don't get that at all for Jean Louis' wife,
Mhm.
and we actually never even hear about her or
How did
her
they fall
name
in
or
love?
anything until she dies.
Yeah.
The first time that we see the actress playing her, the first time that we're in a sequence that is leading to discussing her, is in a scene you're not even sure that that's going to be the case
Mhm.
until a woman shows up and you're like, who's that? What's happening? And then the radio's like, and this woman killed herself. And you're like, oh, that was his wife. And so I think it's clear through the pacing of the film and the script in terms of where it allocates its time resources that Jean-Louis is just either repressing or just less concerned, has already gotten past it and is like, yeah, that's a thing that happened, but
Mhm.
he doesn't dwell on it as much. And I think you can definitely feel Anne dwelling a lot on
Absolutely.
her past and the way that that her previous husband, his presence is constantly felt
Mhm.
throughout the film, because in almost every sequence that the two of them are together, or our two leads, we cut back and intercut to sequences with Anne's previous husband, when they share a kiss, there'll be an intercut to them having a kiss in the past. When when they're making love, she's thinking about their entire journey, which is a really
and then Jean-Louis like, hey, what's going on?
Yeah.
Part of me also thinks that it's important to note just how these two spouses died. Like, Pierre died in front of Annie in an explosion on set, ostensibly, and then
Jean-Louis was out. He was passed out, or he was
in a coma.
He was in a coma.
Yeah,
he was in a coma, and she
herself.
killed herself. And I think that I don't exactly know how those differences create. Like, I can't tell you the steps that they create these other characters, these characters that we actually see and get to see interact. But I really feel that difference between them. That these two events had a pretty different impact on these people. I think because they happened differently, and the film chooses to show us kind of both of those moments. We do get to see that moment in which Pierre dies. We get to see that moment like right before Jean-Louis' wife dies, and so there's something there. These French New Wave films often, it's like you're chewing on a piece of jerky, except the jerky kind of like disappears. You're like I'm biting on it. I've got it. I got something there, and then like I get to the part where I'm gonna taste it, I'm gonna swallow, and it's just not there anymore.
Explaining foreign cinema to an American. Okay, imagine a piece of jerky.
You're chewing on this piece of fat
beef
here,
jerky,
and that's the movie. The fat's the movie.
Imagine, if you will, meat and eating.
Yeah.
That's what it's like.
Okay. I mean, clearly what this film is setting up from a romantic standpoint, especially from introducing our characters' careers and how Anne's husband died as a stuntman, and then subsequently leading us into Jean-Louis' career of being a race car driver / car tester. You're like, oh, okay.
She's got a type.
She's got they're both risk-taking, high octane, action-oriented guys. Yeah. And that's evidently setting up something that's never really explicitly spoken by Anne or Jean-Louis or whoever, but is implicitly understood by the audience that, like, for a number of reasons, because she's still, she hasn't processed all of her feelings about Pierre, her dead husband, and also because she doesn't want to get close to a guy who has had an accident where he nearly died before and continues to do a profession where he could die at any given day. She doesn't want to go through that experience again.
Yeah, and that actually could be the part of the reason why she ends up like sort of rejecting, sort of pushing away the relationship by the end of the film. One thing I will say that I think is a slight missed opportunity is not delving deeper into the fact that he does share a similar job to her previous husband. I thought that was really where a lot of the conflict of the film was going to end up. And I think it is there, as I'm saying, in the background. If you like read into her mindset a little bit, like, oh, that probably is what caused her decision making. But I was really geared up by that first part of the movie where it's slowly established that her husband was a stunt guy. He's a stunt driver. There's obviously some tension there that I would have wanted to see a little bit more conversation about the risks that he's taking, the impact that it has. That's a good point.
Yeah.
Though obviously this one was not written with the sequels in mind that didn't come till multiple decades later. But I was hoping for those, and I think it's a little bit of a missed opportunity in terms of these are unique characters that are in a very unique situation, experiencing grief, having very unique jobs, and that colliding, I think, would have caused some very, very interesting dialogue to happen.
Yeah.
We've been hemming and hawing. You just noticed a big cut. There's a tornado that literally went past our house.
Our roof is gone. I don't know what to do with that.
But quest must go on.
Quest must go on.
Tino's having issues. We don't remember what we were talking about. Let us know in the comments below what we were talking about before the video cut.
Engagement farming.
Yeah. But right now, let's pivot a little bit and let's talk about the score.
Okay.
Because I really enjoy the score of the film.
Yes, I said so at the beginning. Abram, what did you like so much about this score?
Well, we were having a little bit of disagreement about this actually as the film was ending, and you were remarking that we were watching yet another film that maybe overuses a single piece of music. But for me, I really appreciate when there is one strong piece of music and I can associate with a film, and I feel like it really captures the emotional dimensions of it. And I think that even though we do repeat a lot of the same motifs, I think it's a very, very emotionally effective score. Yeah.
Well, I agree, and I
Yeah.
actually think that I made that comment not because it's particularly poorly utilized here. The score is bad here, but that it was funny that the one we talked about last week did basically the same thing. Of
Yeah.
playing the same piece of score in more situations that I think personally can be applicable to one piece of score and have me understand what the intent of that particular piece and composition is. But I think it's a lot better utilized here than it wasn't the go-between. I think it fits a lot better. I think your comment about it adding to the texture and helping you to understand the vibe of the characters and the mood a little bit better. This one matches this film a lot better than whatever the hell is going on in the go-between. But I still do think that while I agree, I like motifs and I like when they repeat. I do not like there to be so few motifs that where you feel the repetition. I like what they do in something like Indiana Jones or Star Wars, where an iconic piece of music is used in particular moments of action, and then through the association and repetition, it becomes iconic, but it's not used so pervasively that it becomes like this is the film's only
What
thing.
I'm hearing is that they should have gotten John Williams to do the score for A Man and a Woman.
Well, I just wish there was like three great pieces of music
I totally
that they
understand
use
what you mean.
For me,
cyclically.
I kind of take it as the one that you're probably referencing is the where it's kind of like boopy. The one where it's like I'm so horrible at
Oh yeah, the one
It's
that
not
goes
helpful at all.
The one that goes beep boo boo bop.
no, the one where they vocalize the
Yes,
that one where they vocalize the rhythm.
Yes.
They sing the rhythm in this very very French way. To me, the music just screams like French. I just love how I'm like
Yes,
I'm in the cafe right now listening to this.
Yeah, you know, that kind of
It's
thing.
got that it's got this like warm glow to it that I feel like all the music is just kind of it's putting me at ease. It's putting me into the headspace of our world. And that specific piece to me has enough variation because we get the version that's instrumental, and then we have some lyrics, and then we have the vocalized instrumental. I'm not exactly sure how to describe that part,
Singing.
but like the singing. Yeah, that's what it's called. It works pretty well for me, and I like the other pieces too. To me, these moments where the music is allowed to take over, and we see them looking at each other, and you know, when I don't have to listen to dialogue, and I'm still hungering for character information, I still want to know more about these characters. I always look for other things. I look for body language, and this film is a body language film romantically. I think there's a lot more going on here about like how these characters are physically with each other than how they talk to each other. At that date scene with the kids and he's wanting the Coca-Cola, there's a good amount of time and a couple of cuts spent on showing this very close insert shot of like how close Jean-Louis' fingers are getting to Annie and how and that like physical closeness. And then later on, it's like when he grabs her hand in the car and it's like, this is very much just me and how I interpret, I guess, romance stuff. But that's the bread and the butter. That's the meat right there, and not necessarily what they're saying to each other. So I like that.
Yeah.
But the music elevates all that so much during those moments.
For sure. I mean, I think you had mentioned towards the beginning, Timo, when you first mentioned the score, that's obviously. I mean, they mentioned samba music. I think Pierre had like gone to Brazil or whatever.
He's got a great line. He's like, "I'm the most Brazilian Frenchman" or something like that.
He says, "I was the blackest white man in Brazil," is what he says.
And then Jean-Louis is like, I can relate to that or something. I was like, what does that mean?
I don't know. Anyway, what I was going to mention is piggybacking off of what Timo had mentioned about the body language of our characters, and specifically noting the stuff where we see Jean-Louis' hand sort of on Anne's chair in that restaurant scene, sort of like trying to maybe inch it onto her shoulder. That is followed.
Edging.
Yeah, he's edging. He's romantic maxing. Anyway, that is immediately followed by a scene, obviously, where they go out on this boat with their kids, and towards the end of that sequence, we get this shot where these kids are wrapped in, I believe it is Anne's giant fur coat, and Jean-Louis' hand and Anne's hand are sort of like grabbing either side of the coat to hug their children, wrap them in the coat. But their hands are also nearly touching, make the close up like it's just the kid's eyes poking out above the coat, and then the hands in there as well. I was like, this is good. I really like the shot. There's a lot of emphasis on our characters nearly touching, really sort of like showing the narrow margin with which they're nearly getting intimate with one
But the
another.
fact that there's still distance between them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then there obviously is the intimate scene towards the very end where they have sex, but it is interrupted by, Anne still being overcome with these thoughts of her dead husband. Which, hey, sometimes that just ruins the mood.
That sounds like another Tuesday for me.
Yeah, it just ruins the mood. But it is quite sensual, as one might expect from a 1960s French film. These sex scenes are very sensual, and it's a lot of close-ups of our characters' faces as they're engaging in these things and showing pleasure and all that.
And a whole lot of cloth foley too.
Oh yes, that's right. But yeah, I mean, I thought all of the intimacy is very palpable here. Sure. I also noticed a lot of from. Amouk Amy. We're probably butchering that woman's name, so I'm very sorry about that. But
maybe the K is silent. I don't know. It's French.
I don't know. Anyway, there's a lot of great facial features from her, or facial expressions from her, especially in key moments where she is like trying to maybe crack Jean-Louis' facade a little bit of being this hardcore cool racer guy, or she's trying to read him a little bit. And get past that initial facade that he's putting on. I think she's very good in this film, as is he. I think, like as we said, there are very two great charismatic leads here.
Yeah.
I agree completely. I guess this sort of the last thing I want to raise in a more general way is just sort of feeling like I don't leave the movie with much.
Sure.
Because I think that's still ultimately my issue with the film.
Yeah.
Because I think, Timo, I agree with you completely, especially the more we discuss it, that it is the vibe of the film that really captivates me. But I guess I was sort of hoping for this particular story to thematically develop into maybe a larger idea that I don't think it ever really reaches, especially in our sort of discussion about how I don't think we totally get to the heart of what's going on with Jean-Louis. And I totally understand the intrinsically experimental nature of the film means that we're probably supposed to do more stitching together of these different scenes and ideas. But I think for me, I'm sort of left without a lot of pieces I could actually connect.
Sure.
And so I really like it on this vibes level. I think there's no better way to put it than that. But I think it ends up leaving me a little bit empty in the end.
No, I agree. And I think it comes down to a vibes thing for me. I actually think I come down sort of on the other side of I like the parts a lot. The vibe as a whole did not particularly engage me because I think about the acting and the cinematography and the backstories of these characters. I'm like, I like that. I like that. But as a cohesive package, I think lacking a little bit of extra character depth and a little bit of extra thematic importance. I'm like, it's a good romance movie. But and I think I can understand, especially for helping to reinvent the cinematic form in this time period that it was released, it probably feeling a lot fresher and more distinct. Like, whoa, I've never seen anything like this.
There are some montage moments in this to me that are like, to me, I'm like, yeah, okay, montage. And then I was thinking about it for a moment. I was like, wait a moment. No.
Okay, montage.
They never seen this before. This is crazy. Look at it. Like they're getting the car ready. Okay, what a montage.
Yep.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's like the final shot of the film is them embracing at the train station, and then the background fades away, and it's just them on like this white. Charles Lelouch invents the PNG in that moment.
Thumbnail.
He invented the WebP file.
Yeah.
Oh,
no. Why
the .avif.
Why Lelouch? Why? No, I mean it obviously seems very sort of impressive technically from those standpoints. I will if we're wrapping up.
He's got something to say.
Well, just
Okay.
last thing I was going to say, and
go for it,
I
yeah.
just checked the date here on it. There's a Godard film I like called Masculine Feminine.
Yeah.
It actually came out the same year.
Ah.
And I almost feel like that's a perfect double feature with this.
Oh, yeah.
Because that film is very cold and I think annoying, but in like a provocative way.
Uh-huh.
Well, that sounds like Jean-Luc Godard.
Yes.
Hey, speaking of him in the Cannes Film Festival, he's got a film that's showing there this year.
Does he
The
really?
last film he ever
That's-
made that he completed the day before his assisted suicide.
Holy shit, that's cool.
Or what do they call it? Assisted suicide? What do they call that? When you like officially like with the state register that you want to die.
Is that euthanasia? or not?
Yeah, like assisted death.
They do
or
it up there in
whatever. I don't know.
Canada a lot.
Yeah. Like he finished it like the day before that happened.
Yeah. So I mean, all I'm
Good
really
timing.
What a crazy guy.
I think,
this is
He's like, I got a deadline, guys.
Yeah.
Literally.
this worked. I like the idea better than this worked out great.
Still sweet.
I mean, ultimately,
Anyway.
what I'm saying is largely neither
sorry.
here nor there. It's a thought experiment. If you want a double feature of French New Wave
Yeah.
films about like gender dynamics,
And also,
I-
the names are basically the same.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that for me, like you got the thesis, antithesis, and then the synthesis, right?
Yes.
Whoa.
I think
imagine.
If you take one as a thesis and as antithesis, one being very cold and intellectually rich, and one being quite warm and maybe a little bit less thematically whole, I think at the intersection of those is something really interesting. But I think I end up feeling like, for me, this is maybe one half of a larger whole.
Yeah,
Superimpose them.
Sure.
I mean,
Watch
I
them at the
just-
same time.
I mean,
And then
I said
cut
at the
out the
begin-
and then watch them with your own score, as I do with silent films.
I said at the beginning, this kind of to me feels like the platonic ideal of a French New Wave film, and to a certain extent, I stand by that. But also, there are French New Wave films that I've seen that I like more than this, that I feel are richer and more capable of being dug into than A Man and the Woman. There are even better French New Wave films that have won the Palme d'Or that we'll be talking about it at some point here.
What other ones?
Umbrellas of Cherbourg.
Oh, yeah.
That
I love that movie.
This
Oh,
one that was
yeah.
2 years before this film, so
Yeah.
yeah, we'll get there at some point. We'll get there at some point, folks. But if you want to hear about the other films that were in competition this year, we'll get to the Palme details, if you would like. So this was one of two
Thanks,
films.
Paul Dextra.
Thank you. This is one of two films that shared the top prize at the Cannes Film Festival this year.
Sure.
We'll talk about the other one, which was an Italian film that was called The Birds, the Bees, and the Italians. We'll get to that at some point.
Well, it won?
Yeah, well, yeah.
Oh, okay,
they
great.
shared the.
I was
they
like,
shared the
man, I
top
wish we
prize.
could review that. Oh, wait.
Yeah, we will. We will talk about it at
Shoot
some point.
next. Fuck you, God's random chance.
The jury president this year was Italian actress Sophia Loren.
Okay.
Also on the jury, the only other name I recognized was British director Richard Lester, who directed Superman 2 and 3. So, well after his time on the jury, however. So, yeah. But of the 25 films also in competition this year, they included one of Tucker's favorites, obviously, the film Alfie.
Oh, I hate that movie.
Yeah.
Oh, I really hate that movie.
Orson Welles' Shakespeare adaptation Chimes at Midnight.
I didn't know you're still kicking.
Yeah. Timo, this one's for you. David Lean's Dr. Zhivago.
Oh.
Let's go, Lawrence Arabia, but cold.
And Seconds by John Frankenheimer.
Wait, hold on.
Dude, it is.
Hang on.
Russia? What's the big tundra in Russia called?
Siberia.
Siberia.
Lawrence of Siberia.
Lawrence-
There we go.
There it is.
It's
Yeah.
Omar Sharif of Siberia. It's just,
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, the last one I mentioned there was Seconds by John Frankenheimer. So
Sure.
lots of other notable films in competition here,
Mhm.
but this and the Birds, the Bees, and the Italians came out on top.
yeah. Well, there you have it. As I think it's time for us to put in our scores here, I just want to give a little extra shout out because I didn't give this one. This is a very Timo shout out. The background sound effects of this film are some of the best that I've heard, like sound design wise, because they'll have nothing in them, and then they'll be like in Paris, and you'll have this very loud, very echoey dog barking, and it's like in a film nowadays, I would get a note from the director being like, turn that dog down, make that dog quieter, like,
Or the boat horn.
oh, the boat horn, make that boat horn quieter. No, this film, it feels so real because these like random little bits of background sound are being allowed to play at a nice and full volume with great reverb and like that, and it's just in there in the background. I haven't really noticed so much of that in many other films. And this is one when I need inspiration of like what to do with background sound effects. Like I probably will revisit this for that reason. Out of all the reasons to revisit this film, I think that's the one that's going to be the biggest for me, is that the background sound effects are genius in my opinion. They're really good. Okay, scores. I punched mine in.
Beep, 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 beep.
Wow. There we go. There we go. We have a number.
Oh, nice and tight.
Yeah.
It is 6.9. That's right, Tucker. The scores are pretty close together. Starting at the bottom, both Tucker and Abram gave it a 6.5. Tanner gave it a 7.
Copied me.
Checkmate, liberal.
Oh.
I can't even see your score when I'm on mine.
We'll review the tapes.
Tanner gave it a 7.
Wind that one back. Yeah.
And then I gave it a 7.4. So 6.9 is going to slot that in between The Ballad of Narayama and Taste of Cherry at spot
It's in
number
company.
7.
It is in company.
I think that is good company. I like those. I
didn't
these,
say that.
No, you
The
didn't.
Ballad of Narayama is a good movie.
I do too.
Yeah, I think that these
I
films are
assume so.
kind of similar in vibe,
Yeah.
in
I just don't like
filmness.
his cherry.
That's fair.
I said it was in company,
Yeah,
not
yeah,
good
I get
company.
It's in
I got
company.
Yeah.
Well, I believe now is time. I didn't pull it up earlier, but we got to pull up that random number.
find the
Spin wheel.
Mm.
How fast can I make it appear on our? Oh,
Well, don't worry about it, Timo, because I also have to make the list appear. Just a moment. I have to go ahead and
I
find
got
it
it.
here.
There we
It's
go.
gonna
I pulled it
be-
up. It didn't take too long. I think it's got.
We got
There it is.
Look at
Hang
that, look at
on.
that. Almost synchronous.
There we
almost
go.
synchronous.
Perfect.
And
All right, here we go.
Shuffle. Okay, ready?
Wheel, wheel, what's your deal? Give us a movie that makes us squeal. Is it on digital or is it on real? Wheel, wheel, what's your deal?
And that number is 85.
Recent film.
Which direction is that
Okay.
for us?
This gets us into the newer era, which we've barely touched,
Yeah.
actually, except for the ones that we reviewed purposefully
Mhm.
because they were new. And this will get us a film from 2016, starring Dave Johns, Haley Squires, some kids,
Some kids.
directed by Ken Loach. This is Daniel Blake.
What's the description of this one?
Yeah.
This is gonna be this is a Palme d'Or ass winner right here. A middle-aged carpenter who requires state welfare after injuring himself is joined by a single mother in a similar scenario.
Yes.
Okay.
This is
Condor.
from Ken Loach, who is a Cannes Film Festival darling
Yeah.
of sorts.
Has he won with other things?
He has certainly been nominated a
Sure.
number of other times. I think he probably has one other win. I can look quickly scroll back. and
I don't
find
think
out,
I've
but
ever
yes.
seen a Ken Loach film. I don't know.
Well, we watched a Lelouch film.
Yes. Oh, from Lelouch to Ken Loach. Very good. I like that. Yeah,
what was
yeah.
it called again? What was it called again? I forgot already.
Daniel Blake.
Daniel Blake.
3 hours?
Daniel Blake.
No, 100 minutes. Hour 40.
So about the same as this one. Well,
Yeah.
that we'll see. What will that film be like?
Yeah.
Will
we'll
it
see
be
it.
as vibey?
He did get one other win. I was right. It was his other win is The Wind That Shakes the Barley, which is a Cillian Murphy film.
Okay. Okay.
We'll get there at some point.
We'll get there some point.
That name is pretentious.
All you,
The
all
Wind
you,
That Shakes the
all
Barley? You
you
fucking
Killian
kidding me?
heads, stay tuned because we'll review
Yes.
that film. But first, Daniel Blake.
R7.
We'll see what this is going to be like. Thank you guys for discussing A Man and a Woman with me and providing some insights on this film. Vibes, man. That's what I got to say. The
Vibes, man.
Vibes. Okay. Well, stay tuned here on Backlot Banter. You know what I always say. Keep it tuned till next time. Stay warm. Keep cool. Peace.
Read this one out.
This is from a guy on Twitter named Concerned Citizen.
Replying to that video.
Yeah, who says, tornado in Nebraska, America right now. They are seriously ramping it up.
So
He's covering a lot of ground.
So,
Yeah,
the, so the, The Chinese communists are sending their largest tornadoes to destroy America's heartland of Lincoln, Nebraska.
What's crazy about the Chinese weather science fucking lasers or whatever is that they started doing this all the way back in like the 1830s.
I know the Chinese have had this power for a long time.
That's when tornadoes were invented.
Yeah,
They've only gotten better at it though, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Bigger and better tornadoes. They're lighter, they're stronger, they last longer.
Soon enough, we're going to have a mile-wide tornado, and it's going to wipe Omaha off the map.
And I, for one, am all for it. What have they ever done for us? Omaha, Nebraska.